Hail and welcome to Hellbound Testimonies, the show where I talk to Satanists, listen to their story, and find out a little bit more about what they believe. I'm Reverend Odinson, a ordained minister of Satan, and here with me to testify today is Minister Jared Nichols. So, hey there, thanks for doing this. How you doing?
Hey, Ansgar, thanks for having me. I am excited to be here. I think this is a really cool way to spread the word about Satanism and maybe hopefully clear up some misconceptions about the religion. So I'm happy to be here. I'm doing well.
Yeah, awesome. So, if you don't mind, we can get right into the questions that I have.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to, just briefly introduce myself. My name's Jared Nichols. I am a minister of Satan with the Satanic Temple. I am the congregation head for the Satanic Temple of Wisconsin. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Satanic Temple or the Satanic Temple of Wisconsin. I'm simply here to share my own personal story, with Satanism and what it means to me personally. I'm also disabled. I have inflammatory bowel disease and dissociative disorder, so I don't work. I am married, don't have any kids, but I do have a dog and two cats. So that's me.
A dog and two cats, those can be almost like kids.
Yeah, yeah, they sure can.
They usually mind better. As someone who has raised three children, the pets usually do mind better.
Most of the time they do. Yes, indeed.
So, were you ever part of a theistic religion?
Yeah, I was. I was raised Roman Catholic in a pretty conservative Catholic family. We lived kind of out in the boonies. Went to church every Sunday, sometimes during the week as well. Never missed a holy day of obligation. I was an altar boy. I was in CCD classes, which, if you're not familiar, are kind of like religious education classes for Catholics, where you study the Catholic Catechism mainly and the Bible to a certain extent, and it's supposed to prepare you for the different sacraments or initiation type things of the religion. Also, I was homeschooled for a few years around fifth grade for religious reasons, and I briefly attended a Catholic high school. So yeah, I was pretty immersed in Roman Catholicism.
Wow, so really, really deep.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay. So what got you out of that? What deconverted you?
I mean, so many things. I mean, it's hard to nail it down. There's not a singular moment that I decided this was all bullshit, but a series of things. I don't know how much time we have, but I will try to go through them here. So, about the year 2000, I was about 12. It's when I started having the onset of my chronic illness, which was inflammatory bowel disease. So I started experiencing, very frequent bathroom breaks. I started to bleed excessively from my rectum. I started losing a lot of blood. I got pretty sick. And the whole time, I was drinking the religious Kool-Aid, and I'm thinking, why is God letting this happen to me? What did I do to offend him? Or, how could this be? And so, of course, that's also kind of around the time where kids start to, awaken more sexually. So I had started experimenting with, masturbation and that kind of stuff, as you do as a kid. And I thought that had to be it. God was punishing me for masturbating, and he might kill me, but if he does, that's his purview. He has the right to do that. So I hid it from my parents because I was ashamed. I was deeply shamed that I was, this bad kid being punished by God for not, following the catechism. But it got to the point where, like I said, I had lost a lot of blood. I was getting pretty sick. And so I finally told my parents about it. Of course, they did take me to a hospital um, and get me treated. I had a colonoscopy, the whole 9 yards. Got on some medicine, started to feel better. Shortly after that, I had a complication. I had a blood clot in my brain and pulmonary embolism. which can happen with inflammatory bowel disease because your body's trying to stop the bleeding in your gut. It can cause clotting throughout the rest of your body. So I had this brain clot, which was another big emergency. More hospitals, more doctors. I'm on blood thinners. And then around that time, I started having the onset of my mental difficulties as well. I started having a lot of anxiety. I felt like maybe God was talking to me in my head. I felt there was all this spiritual stuff going on. And so that kind of caused a schism in my parents. On one hand, my mom, who was a little more scientific, wanted it treated very medically. My dad, who at the time was much more religious, was saying, well, no, maybe there is something spiritually wrong with him, or maybe we need to take him to a priest, or maybe he needs an exorcism. That was brought up at one point. I never actually had an exorcism, but I did go and speak with an exorcist. And I sat down and talked to him. I believe his name was Father Wolf. And he determined that I didn't need an exorcism. Although it was funny because we basically just talked about demons the whole time. I was on a big Lilith kick at that point, so I was telling him all about Lilith, and he was into it. So there was that. That started the doubt as to, is God good? Is he looking out for me? Is he taking an active role in my life? Because I had all these medical problems. Also, at that time, I was starting to discover that I was bisexual, or at least on the spectrum somewhere of the bisexual nature, because I was experimenting with other male friends of mine. Which, to be fair, when I was given the sex ed talk, it wasn't in school because they had pulled me out for religious reasons during that period of time. And it was by my parents, and it was very much emphasized on don't mess around with girls, don't touch girls, don't do this with girls. So I was like, oh, boys are in then, right? That's fine. There was no mention of boys, so
Right, right.
I was like, that seems fair. Um, but then my parents found out about it, and my dad was very upset. Um, Kind of a traumatic experience. He walked me out in the middle of the night to an adjacent cornfield. Like I said, we lived out in the country. It was dark and kind of scary and everything. And he's like, "Well, I know you've been doing these things with boys, and that's really bad, and that's against our religion, and you can't be doing that. It's super super bad, and I want you to stay here and kneel down and pray about this, and I'm gonna just leave you here, and you can pray." And so he left me there. He walked home. I prayed. I'm like, well, if I shouldn't be doing this, I'll stop. I won't do it anymore. Then after a period of time, I just got up and walked back home, and everything was kind of chill. But yeah, it was kind of traumatic to be let out there and kneel down and everything. It felt very othering. I felt like I was being put in a kind of a separate category from them. And then they would ask me questions like, "Oh, you're playing a girl in a video game. Does that mean you want to be a girl?" And it's like, no, it's not how it is. Um, but so that all troubled me greatly. All of that experience really really bothered me, and then the health stuff. And then as I got older, I very much believed in the existence of God or some type of a higher power. Partially because of having a mental illness, it sometimes felt like somebody was trying to communicate through my thoughts, or there was this other presence with me. That kind of general feeling was something I have felt all my life since I was a little kid, which the Catholics loved. They're like, "Oh my God, he's touched by God. He's going to be a saint. He's got this connection to the higher powers and everything." And then I learned about mental illness, and I'm like, "Oh, you know what? I think that's what this is because it's not always good things that you're feeling are being told to you, and it's not always sunshine and roses. Sometimes it's bad stuff." And they're like, "Oh, well, of course that's the devil." But no, it's just turns out it's facets of your personality that manifest in that way for some people. But of course, as a teenager, I didn't realize the full extent of what was medically happening to me. I figured maybe I was some kind of priest or a shaman or something. So I kind of got into New Age religion, and I studied kind of paganism, different early religions across the world things like that. I was a frequent at the New Age shops in town. I was on that path for a while. Um, it never really led anywhere or solidified, or it never really gave me that much peace of mind. If anything, it increased my anxiety because now we're talking about conspiracy theories, we're talking about the government, we're talking about aliens, all that stuff that kind of
Mhm.
goes with New Age religion. It's kind of borderline conspiracy theory stuff, which increased my anxiety and a lot of my mental health problems. So I went down that road for a while. Discovered I wasn't finding much peace. Decided to maybe try to dip my toes back into Christianity in the form of Episcopalianism, which is more of a Protestant faith. That was actually somewhat nice. It wasn't very woo woo or superstitious. It was very practical. It was a lot of charity focused stuff, but there was still this whole idea that everything in the Bible is true, and Jesus died, and that was this huge thing that shifted the world, and now people can go to heaven, and there was still supernaturalism there, and there was still a focus on um, salvation and that kind of stuff. So eventually, I got frustrated with that as well, and I was like, man, I don't know what to do. I feel all these things. And it was kind of around that time too that I started finally getting some good psychiatric help. I had been on and off seeing psychiatrists since I was a child, but a lot of the times they were just like, "Yeah, you're a weird guy. There's not much we can do about it." But I'd finally started seeing some people. Oh, there's a cat that started to take me seriously, and started to prescribe me some medication. So I started taking medication for anxiety and for some mild antipsychotics. And around this time, I was actually living in Colorado. I moved there briefly with my wife because my brother was living out there for work, and I fell in love with the mountains and the environment and the society out there, and the it was a lot more liberal and progressive, and it was just really great. Hugely expensive though, which is why we couldn't stay. But um, but yeah, out there, I was in therapy regularly. I was seeing psychiatrists, psychologists. My diseases were mostly in remission when I talk about my inflammatory bowel disease. Um, and I was getting a lot of relief from the counseling and from the medical side of things. I'm like, this has helped me more than religion ever has in terms of quelling my anxieties, living my daily life, explaining the things I was experiencing. It really was a good answer. And I still kind of felt this, well, maybe there's a God, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. And I guess I did kind of have a moment where I decided, I think specifically, I was out on a bike ride, biking through the foothills of Colorado, listening to Ghost, the band. Um, and I just kind of had this moment where I realized I can choose not to believe in God. I can choose not to believe in the supernatural, and I can choose to trust science. And if I make that choice, I don't have to worry anymore about if I'm going where I'm going to end up when I die, or what's going on with me, or why am I having these strange feelings or thoughts. I can trust the science. I can trust my doctors, and I can stop trying to internally rationalize it with all this superstition and woo. And I can choose to have peace. And I made that choice. And I said, you know what? I don't believe in any of this anymore. I don't believe there's a higher power. I don't think there's any evidence for it. I've never been shown evidence for it in my extensive time in Christianity, and even in paganism. There was never any evidence presented to me. Um, and I chose science. And ever since then, I've been much more at peace. I don't. I'm not kept up at night worrying about conspiracy theories or about the state of my soul, or about um, you know if God was trying to tell me to do something. I used to always look for signs, like give me a sign that I should do this or that. Or I don't have to look for signs. I can trust myself. I can be self-reliant. I can focus on my own happiness and doing something productive in this life rather than having to worry about the next, trying to wait for some kind of reward or punishment. Um, and I still struggle sometimes with my mental health. But that's why Satanism is great, especially being part of a satanic community. You have those you can reach out to for support, and
Yeah.
you can, kind of ground yourself in it. So long-winded, I know, but that is how I got from conservative Catholic to Satanist in a nutshell.
Well, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? Just to hear that story. So, yeah, long-winded is good. um, that's a really exceptionally interesting story. So are you like an out Satanist? Do your family, like your mother and father, know that you're a Satanist?
Yes, so they do. And well, I know I just kind of may have described some borderline ritual abuse-ish type stuff with them. They have come a long way, and I'm very proud of them. My dad is kind of just a agnostic general Christian now. He's not a super conservative Catholic. He is exploring his faith and questioning it more. My mother doesn't really focus much on it at all. She's a medical professional and she focuses on her career and her new husband. My parents got divorced, and I think that was the best thing that has ever happened to them, honestly, because they both grown so much as individuals because of that, and they do accept me. I don't think my dad is thrilled about it, but he is very much now about being there for his children and being in their
Mhm.
corner, to where he does more than tolerate it. He, like, if I tell him something that happened, he'll encourage me when he can. But I honestly, I think deep down he's a little sad. I think my mom doesn't really get it, but she's like, if it makes you happy, that's great. So I'm out
That's
to
cool.
them. I'm not out to my grandparents. My only surviving grandparents are my mother's, and they are still very conservative. And if they were to find out, they would disown me. And that I wouldn't mind so much, but it would really mess with my mom a lot if they did that. So I
Mhm.
do try to keep it from them for her sake, because I don't want to put her through a big family schism. When they found out one of my cousins is completely gay and he was getting married to his boyfriend, they tried to disown him, and it was this whole big
Ugh.
family thing, and it was a mess. So
So you're
I
playing
don't want that to
peacekeeper.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, one thing that is important to remember about the sort of abusive environment that goes on in mainstream religions is a lot of times the people that are perpetuating the abuse are also themselves victims, right?
Mm.
And until they know how to free themselves of that sort of victimhood, oftentimes they're going to perpetuate. So, no, but I'm really glad that it sounds like your parents have grown and they, even if they don't necessarily like it, they accept you. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'm very fortunate that way because I know a lot of Satanists I talk to don't necessarily have that with their parents. And coming from such an extreme difference as a child, it's really just astounding that they're at a point where they can accept that part of me. So I'm very fortunate.
It's a pretty unexpected turn for that story. Like the story that you told, you don't expect it to kind of end. Well, not that it's ended, but you know what I mean. It end up where it is. That's really cool. Speaks a lot of how willing to grow and learn your parents are, which speaks well of them to me. I'm when did you first find out that like modern Satanism as you and I would know it now, was a thing? Where did you kind of first learn of it?
I mean, I always had an idea of Satanism, but when I first heard of it would have been as a kid, and it would have been very much the satanic panic kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna put my cat outside. He just wants to say hello.
Yeah, go for
I'm just gonna
it.
step out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it was first kind of the satanic panic stuff, and then when I was looking into kind of paganism and shamanism, this would have been kind of when I was a teenager, young adult, probably around 2005 or 6 or somewhere in there. Of course, I first discovered LaVey and the Satanic Bible,
Yeah.
and I read that, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not sure." And then I reread it later, and I was like, some of this stuff is really good in terms of giving love to those who deserve it. You don't have to try to love everyone. Stand up for yourself. Be
Mhm.
self-reliant. Don't believe in gods or bow down or worship them. And but then some of it was very social Darwinism, might is
Yeah.
right, survival of the fittest. And as somebody with health problems, I felt like that wasn't welcoming to me. Like I would not be like maybe I
Mhm.
should just be phased out of the gene pool or something
Yeah.
because of my conditions. So that wasn't a good fit for me, but I liked what I was hearing. I discovered the Satanic Temple. Um, I don't know. Let me think. It probably would have been maybe 4 or 5 years after that, and it was much more in line with what I believed, and it had all of the elements of Satanism that I liked from the Church of Satan, but it had much more emphasis on compassion, empathy, lifting each other up,
Mhm.
working together, quality of life, improving the world around you, and kind of a little bit more of a liberalism to it, which I found very appealing.
Yeah, fair enough. Then there's definitely some, we'll just say, sort of problematic stuff in LaVeyan Satanism, by my view, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of a attitude of, well, if you can take it, then it's yours, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. Um. So, do you? We already kind of covered what kind of brought you into Satanism.
Sure.
But do you believe in anything supernatural at all?
I mean, it's. I guess maybe one thing would be I do believe with how expansive the universe is, we're probably not alone in the universe. There's
Mhm.
probably some other sentience, like some type of alien life, whether it be something we recognize as life or not. I think it's probably highly unlikely that alien life has contacted us or is has a presence on Earth or anything like that. But I just believe with how expansive the universe is, there's probably something out there that is in some ways similar to us. It
Mhm.
seems more likely than the alternative. Um, but otherwise, I mean, I do struggle with magical thinking sometimes. With thinking, oh, this is a sign that I should do this, or wondering about the nature of consciousness, which I guess is more philosophical than magical. Sometimes I wonder if consciousness is simply biological, or if consciousness is somehow reabsorbed kind of back into nature when we die in a similar fashion to how our bodies are reabsorbed back into nature and maybe recycled into some other type of electrical energy. But I don't put much stock into those kind of thoughts because I realize A, I do have mental illnesses, and B, I've always been very imaginative. Ever since I
Mhm.
was young, I was always, writing or drawing or trying to create stuff, and so I come up with kind of stories, and that's kind of how I classify those kind of thoughts. I don't put a lot of belief or faith into them, but I do sometimes have interesting thoughts
Mhm.
about the nature of reality.
It's fun things. Sounds like it's like fun things to muse on and ponder and things like that, but nothing you're gonna actually place your belief in.
Right. Correct.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, let's see. Where are we? Sorry, I lost my list here. Ah, here we go. Um, so how would you describe modern Satanism? Like, what is it to you?
I mean, my initial response would be it's post Christianity. It's something that a lot of people who are raised Christian come to because they understand the flaws and the abuses of Christianity, and they want to live as atheists, but also to have a sense of community and a mythos and a um, uh, sort of rituals in their life that can kind of mark momentous occasions. But I don't think it's entirely fair to call it simply a product of Christianity, because we do have a lot of people that come to Satanism that have been lifelong atheists, or they come from Judaism, or they come from paganism, or they come from other backgrounds. And so I think Satanism is highly personal. It's a religion that's centered around bodily autonomy and freedom of expression. So it's going to mean different things to different people. And I don't think it's fair to try to shake it all down to one thing, but I do see patterns in life a little bit more easily than some. And I do see a lot of uh, uh, people who have been hurt by Christianity or who have become disgusted by Christianity, and but they want something that has that sense of community and that sense of wonder that they're used to, which is good. I think every society, has these communities that naturally form around shared beliefs, shared values, shared morals, and kind of around a shared culture. And the culture can include things like a mythology, stories that are like parables, things like that, that have lessons to them. And for a lot of people, the characters and stories that appealed to them had to do with Satan and Satanism and kind of the literary character of Satan. And these are things that people can kind of come together around and relate to um, very easily, especially if they have experienced religious trauma in their life. But having said that, I wanted to make it very clear that I don't believe that Christians should be eradicated or wiped out. I
Yeah.
think there are good Christians and bad Christians, and I
Mhm.
think they're just like any other religion. I think historically Christianity has been problematic for society because of different atrocities that have happened in its name, and that continue to happen on some scale. Um, and so I think those things need to be mitigated. But
Right.
I believe, people that are out there preaching love and tolerance and self-sacrifice and these kind of values that are attributed to, like, Jesus and his ministry and stuff, I think that's all great. And I totally believe in religious plurality. I think one of the great things about America, at least up until now, and hopefully continuing into the future,
Hmm.
is that we have the freedom to be whatever religion we want to be, and the government can't dictate that or make rules, based on religions. It's all separate. We have the separation of church and state so far, and that's excellent. And I think I can see a world where Christians and Satanists can coexist.
Very well put. Very well put. I actually have a question from somebody in the chat right now, and I thought it was kind of relevant to the current discussion. So I'll
Sure.
normally I would wait till the end to ask some of these, but this is kind of relevant. So Ryan wants to know: do you think it's possible to believe in ghosts and an afterlife while holding atheist views? Asking for myself, says.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think anything's possible. I think in terms of what you believe, people are going to have various beliefs. I think you can be an atheist in the sense that you don't believe in a supreme being. You don't believe in this higher power that exists that made the universe and controls things and that kind of stuff. So you don't believe in a higher power, you're an atheist. Now, if you want to expand on that, typically people who are atheists don't believe in the supernatural. However, I don't think, and I would have to look back at maybe the definition of atheist, but I don't think that's necessarily a part of it. So if you believe in a soul and you believe in the possibility of an afterlife, or the soul can somehow come back to earth, I would disagree with you, and I would say that I find that a little silly. But you have the right to believe that, and if you believe that and don't believe in a higher power, I think you could still call yourself an atheist technically.
Yeah, I mean, atheist is the way I understand it is the answer to one and one question alone. Does a God exist? And as
Right.
long as you don't believe that a God exists, you're an atheist. So, if you believe that there is a place where souls go in the afterlife or reincarnation or anything like that, I guess you would be an atheist with belief in the supernatural. I do know some atheists who believe in things like, crystal healing and,
Mm,
things
okay.
like that. But I think that's a little more rare, but I do think it exists.
Maybe there is a term, or there should be a term, differentiating people that simply don't believe in God versus people that don't believe in anything supernatural whatsoever. Maybe we need a term to cover that.
Yeah. So out and about in your everyday life, how does Satanism affect your life? Like, how does Satanism affect your, everyday existence?
Sure. I mean, well, like I had said at the beginning, I don't work. I'm on disability, so I don't go out a whole lot to interact with other people that often. I go out on the weekends with my wife sometimes.
Mhm.
I mow my buddy's lawn during the week, so it doesn't affect a whole lot in my dealings with other people because they're very slim. But it does affect me a lot on a personal level on a daily basis. Like I was saying earlier, it is a way to kind of quiet some of my anxieties and bring about a sense of peace of mind and a sense of grounding to reality and to the present moment. Um, Otherwise, I do think a lot about the first tenet. Treating people with compassion and empathy. That's something though that I already had been practicing. Even with my time with Christianity, I never really ascribed to like the hateful type of fire and brimstone
Mhm.
Christianity. I was already on kind of the compassion and empathy train, like this is what we should be doing. So I continue that. Most people that I do interact with sometimes are surprised by um, how compassionate I come off as from the get go, or how genuine I can be. I try to be very authentic. I try to practice
Yeah.
that spirit of Satanism to live as my pure, authentic self at all times, and to not hide behind um, false representations of myself or glamours or personas. Or I try not to ever put on an act to appeal to the people that I'm around. I try to always be my authentic self.
That's actually quite admirable. It really is. So do you wear like I like that beautiful jacket you've got on. Do you wear satanic symbols out and about in public often?
Yeah, I mean, I've got the jacket, which has some symbology, some kind of sigils
Mhm.
on the side, and then I've got the devil tarot card. Um, so most of my T-shirts do have something satanic leaning on them, whether it's a
Mhm.
Baphomet or I have the TST Wisconsin shirt. I'll wear those out and about for sure. I don't wear a lot of jewelry because I have a nickel allergy, and even other types of metal tend
Oh,
to
wow.
irritate my skin. So I don't do a lot of that. I would like to get some type of like the TST logo on some type of a cord or a necklace to have. But yeah, I do. I would say I'm certainly now. I have the minister stick pin on my fedora that I wear out and about.
Very
So
nice.
yeah, I do.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on the more esoteric side of modern Satanism?
Yeah, I guess in order to answer that, how do you define what is esoteric?
Well, let's talk about rituals, symbology, symbolism, meditation, mindfulness, that sort of
Okay.
thing.
Because esoteric, I think, if I'm remembering my words correctly, that translates to hidden or secret.
Um, Oftentimes something simply very difficult to understand can also
Okay.
be esoteric. Things like that. But let's talk. We'll talk about the more, I guess, religious side of the religion, where we're doing rituals, rites, mindfulness, meditation, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's hugely important. I think that that's part of what codifies Satanism as a religion is
Hmm.
the fact that it does have rituals and it has rites and it has ways to live your life. It has morals and values. I think a lot of that stuff can be hugely beneficial. I do like my wife is a little more kind of into that stuff than me these days. I was the one that got her into tarot originally, and she still really likes tarot. But I use it more of like as a meditative tool. She'll often have a card just pulled and kind of displayed in the house, and it's interesting to look at it and then think about the meanings of that card, and then kind of apply those meanings to what you're thinking about that day, or what you're going through mentally at that point, just to give yourself kind of a different perspective. I think that's very useful. Um, I think, yeah, I think the esoteric stuff needs to be there. I know for myself, I need to get into a habit of using meditation more. There's a lot of health benefits to meditation, especially for somebody who has a very busy mind like I do. I could certainly benefit from it. I could probably also benefit from yoga, although I don't know if in this day and age that would be considered esoteric. It was very much at one time.
Yeah, it was.
I remember specifically when I was a Catholic and it was first coming out, one of the other kind of Catholic nut jobs at my local church was very much up in arms about yoga and the fact that they used mantras, because to him, mantra was
Hmm.
the name of some Mesopotamian demon. And he saw the mantras as
Oh,
like
good lord.
incantations. Like they were doing these incantations while they were stretching. And um, mantras are very useful at calming the mind and focusing. Um, so yeah, I think the ritual and the religious stuff. I think it's something that people tend to overlook in their practice of Satanism, and it's something that's easy to ignore. And it's easy to put off, like, oh, I'll do it someday, or I'll do it another time, or it's not going to benefit me. When in fact these things can be very beneficial, to your daily life and to your thought process and to your general well-being. But it seems to be often overlooked.
Yeah, one of the videos on that I'm planning on putting together for this channel is all about sort of my exploration of ritual and where I think the power and the importance of ritual lies, um, in either invoking your own religious experiences, or perhaps as simply a symbolic expression or meditative. I mean, something I like to think about is, years ago, meditation was considered sort of an esoteric religious woo kind of thing. And nowadays we call it mindfulness, and there's real neurological studies to back up, what goes on. We've also had
Yeah.
neurological studies into, religious experiences and what parts of the brain light up during these, religious experiences. And so I find that really fascinating. Um,
One one thing I've also found fascinating, and I was really into for a while, when I was into my kind of my pagan phase, was um, near-death experiences and their similarity to certain states brought about by psychedelics like DMT and psilocybin and things like that,
mhm.
and how being in that state of kind of between life and death, or when some of those chemicals are released in the brain that kind of get released when you're dying, you can kind of have that very profound um, perspective shifting experience. And I think that there is a place for the responsible use of psychedelics in religion. I think that that's something that should be brought back that we kind of lost, because I think it was much more effective or as effective as things like extreme fasting, self-flagellation. These kind of things bring about an altered state of consciousness, and then in that altered state of consciousness, you can, have perspectives on your life that you otherwise might not have ever considered. And I think that in a proper environment and done safely, that kind of stuff is very helpful. And I think a lot of people could have a huge shift in their compassion, their empathy, their personality, had they experienced something like that. And so I would like to see that become more mainstream. I don't know if it ever will be again. Um, and I don't think that I am necessarily rushing out there to do mushrooms at this point, because let me tell you, it's not a walk in the park. But it is, it can be hugely valuable. And that was a big part of, I think, unlocking my mind to the possibility of atheism and to the possibility of separating myself from this monotheistic sort of um, lifestyle was the use of psychedelics as well when I was exploring those kind of things as a young adult.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few of neurologists who are actively studying things like consciousness talk about how useful psychedelics can be when taken in very specific ways and responsibly. So, I'm with that. I get that. So what are your thoughts though on the more activist side of Satanism?
Yeah, I think it's also good. I think it's also required. I think that's a part of Satanism, and I feel that that's a part of what drew me to the Satanic Temple specifically, as opposed to something like Levian Satanism or just being a independent Satanist. Was kind of how the Satanic Temple was kind of founded to actively oppose theocracy, which is something that I was very opposed to, and to also, create a community for Satanists, as well as, protecting the rights and liberties of Satanists and really all religious minorities and religious majorities, I suppose, in the United
Hmm.
States. So I think that that goes hand in hand, especially with the Satanic Temple. I think you can very much be a Satanist and not be an activist. Um, it's a little more strange to be a TST Satanist and not be an activist, but it's also something you can totally do. All the activism stuff is voluntary, as is all the ritual stuff.
Hmm.
I do worry sometimes, at least with my congregation, that the activism is kind of overpowering the community building, the peer support, and some of the esoteric stuff we were talking about earlier. I ideally would like to see a kind of a balance of the two, and that is kind of what I'm going for, as a leader in my congregation, and what I go for in my personal life. I know um, lately my bandwidth has been a little bit lower, but I would like to get out to some demonstrations in my small town here. We have an indivisible group that does a demonstration up by the kind of the main street couple times a month. I'd really like to attend one of those.
Hmm.
And those are the kind of things I would have never been interested in had I not found Satanism. It's motivated
Yeah.
me to actively want to improve the world around me, to use my time here to actually do something rather than just pray and believe that my prayers are somehow making the world a better place. The Satanist doesn't pray, the Satanist goes out and makes the change that they want to see in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have a side, when we're talking about the esoteric versus the activistic, do you have a side that you more identify with, or are you pretty split down the middle?
Yeah, it's hard if I were to pick a side. I mean, historically, it probably would have been more of the esoteric stuff because of my deep interest in religion and world religions and consciousness and that kind of stuff. You would think that I would fall more on that side, but like I said, that side can come with its own anxieties. Whereas the activist side, well, I guess activism comes with anxiety as well. With the current state of things in America, it's not a walk in the park to be out there expressing your freedoms, and we have leadership who are trying to take away our freedoms. So I guess they both have their pros and cons. Um, I guess for me, more than anything, it's a personal philosophy and it's a daily way of living. I think that my Satanism is very much about what I do between when I wake up in the morning and when I go to bed at night. And yeah, I don't know if I can't really answer if I'm more of an activist Satanist or more of an esoteric Satanist.
That's fair. That's fair. So, what does being a minister of Satan mean to you?
Yeah, so I mean, being a minister, really to me is about giving back to the community. It's a way for me to serve my community, to help facilitate events, to help facilitate a space for people to come together that have these shared beliefs and values, to kind of act as a liaison between the larger Satanic Temple organization and my local congregation, to make myself available to be with people to facilitate rituals for things such as unbaptisms or to mark different rites throughout their life. It's a way for me to give back to the community and to have kind of a sense of purpose. Being someone who's disabled, we can very easily fall into kind of despair and feeling like we don't have necessarily a purpose or a reason for existing, which is totally not true because
No.
your existence is more than your profession. I mean, your existence is how you touch the lives of your family. It is things that you create or explore or learn, or your hobbies or how you contribute to the world around you. But a vocation is kind of part of that. So being a minister to me is a vocation. um, it's something that I was very active early on. I did a lot of stuff in helping to found the Wisconsin congregation. I did some work with the Gray Faction campaign, which, if you're not familiar with Gray Faction, they're the campaign of TST that fights against pseudoscience and recovered memory therapy, and stuff that it was kind of like in Michelle Remembers and that kind of stuff that started the Satanic Panic. So I did some articles on some conspiracy therapists who kind of perpetuate this bullshit. So I have a couple articles on the website that were written by me. I don't remember exactly which ones, but doing things like that, doing work in the community, when we do our community projects to help raise funds for TST campaigns or do highway cleanups or raising funds for humane societies or doing drives for goods for these societies or food drives, being able to help, bring those things into reality is what being a minister is to me. And it's something that I've admittedly in the last month or two been a little slacking on. Um, I've been feeling a kind of a little bit burned out, but that happens sometimes. And I'm really happy to see our congregation kind of step up and fill that void. We've got so many great things going on in our congregation. We've got people stepping up to fill council positions. We've got your host Ansgar here doing these great talks and being really active in our community, helping people that are reaching out for like peer support assistance, something that I've always been very passionate about, but I haven't had as much energy to do lately. Seeing somebody else able to kind of step up and do that stuff has just been uh, really heartwarming and really just encouraging to see the community come together. And so, yeah, I'd like to, continue ministering to the community and hopefully redouble my efforts here as we move into the fall.
There's something to be said for taking a step back and kind of recharging those batteries, those emotional batteries, and coming back at it. It's not like the world hasn't been pretty freaking stressful lately. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a favored tenant?
Yeah, beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs.
It's a beautiful tenant. It really is. I love
Yeah,
it.
it's my mantra. It's what I say to when I get too excited, anxious about something, or I start thinking weird thoughts, or I'm scared of a medical procedure. I have to get colonoscopies like every 3 years, and it's always, oh, I hate it. I'm like, oh my, the prep is so bad. Am I gonna not wake up from the anesthesia? Am I gonna die during the procedure, or worse, am I going to be awake for the whole thing? And it's like, no, trust the science. They do millions of these every day. This has
Hmm.
been rigorously tested. They know what they're doing. There's an anesthesiologist with you the whole time that is specifically trained in giving you exactly the right amount of anesthesia. And learning those kind of things and learning about the process really does a lot to quell those fears. Um, so yeah, that's definitely my favorite one.
You know what? I love that answer. All right. So the next one though, when you or someone else invokes the name of Lucifer, Satan, what does that
Mhm.
bring to mind for you? Who is that character to you?
Oh wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I think we actually did a Devil's Parlor discussion group about this in our congregation, and we had a good hour-long discussion about it because it's so much and so different, but yet there's so many similarities. It brings the idea of this kind of mythological character, kind of this Promethean stealing fire from the gods, this fallen um, angelic creature that decided, enough of this bullshit. I'm going to be my own person, and I'm going to be self-reliant, and I'm going to, support those who have similar ambitions as to mine, and I'm going to not accept arbitrary authority. I'm not going to just elevate this tyrant. I'm going to, rebel. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to be my own person, and I'm going to bring that to people who want to do that as well. That share those same things. I'm going to give the knowledge of good and evil to people that want that knowledge. The serpent in the garden,
Hmm.
bringing that knowledge to mankind is kind of to me like stealing fire from the gods. That was the one thing that God was hoarding for himself was, this awareness of morality. And
Hmm.
so that was what, the devil offered us in that story. And then there's so many other stories, with the revolt of the angels, with Paradise Lost, of just, rebelling against tyranny, of the arts and learning and reason and growing your own knowledge as opposed to having knowledge, or I should say, opposed to having propaganda kind of fed to you, finding out for yourself what is true and what is real. Um, and so I do imagine, Satan as kind of a mythological sort of dark winged humanoid like figure, kind of sexy, kind of
Hmm.
dark and tall, dark and handsome kind of thing. Um,
The
but
sexy, sensitive bad boy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I get that.
Um, so yeah, and I like the idea. I like the aesthetic of demons and devils a lot. I'm a big 40K fan, and I like the Chaos Marines, and I like the demonettes and the demons and devils. And like I said, I'm a Ghost fan. I was a goth in high school. I liked the whole Hot Topic aesthetic. The then Hot Topic, not the now Hot Topic. The now Hot
Yeah,
Topic is
totally
garbage.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, totally different. So I mean, I've always liked that kind of aesthetic. I like heavy metal. But I like all kinds of music. I also like
Mhm.
classical. I like rap. I like all sorts of things. But yeah, I've always been into kind of the demon and goth kind of artistic styles. So it was an easy thing for me to embrace the champion of those kind of that kind of culture.
Awesome, awesome. So do you have a favorite book, like an absolute favorite book that you think of as a Satanist piece of literature?
Yeah, I was trying to think about books that really appealed to me in terms of Satanism. I think I would probably have to go with Revolt of the Angels. Their characteristic representation of God as this like small, petty tribal war god to his kind of ascent to power, and then Satan being like, guys, this guy is just insane and obsessed with war and death, and I don't know why you're worshiping him. And that kind of spin on things, I thought was really smart and a really good way to present it. Um, but Otherwise, I don't know. As far as like media, um, I find I connect more with the idea of Satan or Satanism through music. Like I said, Ghost is a big one for
Mhm.
me. I'm also a big Dio fan. I love pretty much all of Dio's music. Um, I, I do look for kind of satanic leaning stuff. Like Wumpscut is a German industrial band that has some satanic stuff. Twin Temple is really good. Um, and then there's a myriad of metal, Cradle of Filth and others, Strapping Young Lad, the list goes on. But I really connect with that character more through music, even like classical music like Baroque. I find very satanic. One of the only good things, in my opinion, to come out of the Church of Satan was a classical music podcast they were running called, what was it called? Fuck, I can't remember what it was called, but it hasn't
Mhm.
been on for like 2 or 3 years. It's called The Devil's Tune or The Devil's Music or something like that. But it was one of their ministers, and he would just play classical music and he would introduce it and tell you who was the composer and who was performing the piece. And it was like marketed as music for your ritual chamber
Mhm.
to listen to while you're doing rituals.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, it was really cool, and I would listen to it every time they came out with a new one. But then they just, I don't know, they just it fizzled out. Um,
Mhm.
but I think that can be very satanic as well, classical.
All right. So if there was one thing you would like the outside world, right, to understand about modern Satanism, what would that be?
That we don't believe in a literal Satan, and the fact that we're Satanists is because we all identify with this character and mentality, which, if you actually took the time to understand, you would probably kind of identify with a little yourself. It's not what you're taught Satan is. He's not this guy out there raping and murdering and just trying to fuck shit up for the sake of being obnoxious. You know,
Right.
the literary character of Satan is very thoughtful, very intelligent, definitely a rebel, but has reasons for rebelling.
Mhm.
Um, if people took the time to understand that depiction of Satan and more than just what they've been told, and what they've been told is largely fabricated because there's very little in the Bible describing Satan or his motives or what he is about.
Mhm.
It's all just things preachers and ministers have decided to preach about. They've just kind
Yeah.
of all pulled it out of their ass, and it's been common knowledge, about what Satan is or what he wants. None of it is really biblical fact. It's all stories. So look at some other stories about Satan. Look at some other literature about Satan, and get a different perspective on what that character was about and why he was the way he was. And so yeah, my short answer is we don't believe in a literal Satan, and we identify with Satan because of that character in literature.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, if you look at the Bible too, if you actually read about Satan, the people call him the Lord of Lies, but he's like one of the only characters actually telling the truth. you know. But yeah, so last question here
sure.
is what do you see as the future of this religious movement, and where would you like it to go in the future?
Yeah. So those are two very different answers. I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but I am a little concerned about the future of specifically organized Satanism, like the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple. The Church of Satan has been largely inactive for since the 70s, 80s,
Hmm.
and barely does anything. And even their community events, like their get togethers and stuff, are sparsely attended, if at all. And their presence in media and the world is incredibly limited. The Satanic Temple was doing a phenomenal job of being very present, creating spaces for people to meet, creating help programs like Sober Faction, creating different legal things to help support Satanists and minority religions. It was very, very promising. Um, Over my time with the Satanic Temple, I've seen a lot of internal turmoil. I've seen a lot of schisms. I've seen a lot of people leave, a lot of people come, a lot of people leave. And it worries me for the longevity of the organization. I feel like it's got so many great frameworks in place, but those frameworks need to be filled in with people that are dedicated to those projects and to seeing those things come to fruition. And when you're having such turnover issues where people are coming in and out, it's hard to really develop those things without a stable, I don't want to say workforce, but a stable group of volunteers, that are working on that stuff. And so it does worry me. Like I kind of right now, I see all of these other small satanic groups popping up. Like I think one that comes to mind is Reno Satanic, and then they have a couple in the UK, and they have a couple more in America where they're these small independent groups of Satanists, which is great that they're getting people together and they're doing stuff, but it doesn't have the oomph and it doesn't have the power that a big organization can generate, like TST, that can really move people, that can generate dollars that they can use
Hmm.
for the charitable works and for the lawsuits, um, and can really get their message out there as effectively, as a large organization can. So the future I want to see is there be, you know maybe more than one, maybe two or three larger satanic groups out there doing really good work, and then there certainly can be a plethora of other independent satanic groups or Satanists or smaller things working together. But as far as what I see realistically, I am concerned. I am concerned about the longevity. And I mean, Satanists were all very independent thinkers. We're all very unique. A lot of us are kind of weirdos, normal weirdos, but weirdos. And it's kind of like herding cats. I mean, trying to get a bunch of atheists to agree on stuff and work together. And I get that. But if we want things to get done, we've seen the most impactful work of TST when there's a bunch of people working together to make stuff happen. That's when the monuments get erected. That's when the laws get challenged. That's when
Hmm.
rituals get in the news and people start paying attention. Um, is when we all kind of work together in mass. So that's what I want to see. Is that going to continue or happen in the future? I'm unsure.
You know, um, there's a reason that organizations like, let's say, Roman Catholicism wield so much power in our cultures. There's a reason that big mega churches, wield massive power. And that's because whether or not they actually agree, they all come together and work together when they decide it's time to wield that power. And I think that as sort of almost dirty as it sounds, sometimes we might need to be able to just kind of swallow our pride a little bit and be willing to work together for the betterment of things like pluralism and all the things that Satanism stands for, the things that brought us to Satanism. You know what I mean?
Right. Definitely. I agree fully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we head out, do you have anything that you want to shout out or something you want to plug or maybe media you want to recommend people, anything like that?
Oh boy. If you like EDM, check out my brother's band, the Void Boys, VOYDBOYS, Void Boys music. It's great. Um, Other stuff I want to plug, not really. TST Wisconsin is doing great stuff. Check out our webpage. Send us an email at tstwisconsin at thesatanictemple.org. Look for our events that we'll be doing in Wisconsin. Um, I do want to leave you with a funny story because we've been talking a lot about rationalism and realism and talking about, not no supernaturalism kind of stuff. Let's only focus on facts. So I told you I was always very much looking for signs, right? I was always looking for God, show me this or show me that, or I felt like God was talking to me or whatever. I'd have these conversations with him. So this you can chew on this for a while. When I had first started dating my wife, we hadn't been dating that long, maybe about a year, but I was feeling like things were getting pretty serious, and I was thinking maybe I should, propose to her at some point in the near future because we were getting pretty serious, and but I wasn't sure, so I was at this time still very Christian or at least agnostic. And I was walking home from work and I kept feeling like I should propose to her soon. I should propose to her soon. And I'm like, this is no, I don't need to. I don't need to. And I was thinking, no, you should do it. So I'm like, okay, fuck it. God, if you want me to propose to this woman, send me $100 today and I will do it. So I gave him this ridiculous thing. Okay, like if you send me $100, I'll propose to this woman. So I got home, opened my mailbox, pulled out a letter from Verizon, opened it, and there was a check for $109.
So, okay, the moral
I
of the
proposed to her.
story, extort God.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh,
Oh my God.
it was hilarious.
The moral I'm taking away from that is if you want to talk to God, just extort him for money. That's like
Yep.
the way to go. All right, really, thank you for doing this. Thank you for appearing on this. This is really fantastic. This has become kind of a passion project of mine. And if you're out there in the audience listening to this anywhere on the interwebs and you actually want to come here and testify, tell your story, go ahead and you can get a hold of me on social media. My links are down in the description. And until then, Satan bless, hail Satan, and hail yourself.
Hail Satan.